Hello and welcome to Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life. This is Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Johanna. Hey, Johanna.
Hi, Jared.
What are we going to talk about today?
Field trips.
Tell me about field trips.
Well, they're a thing that educators know they should do because they're really beneficial for students, but they are so much work. So much work.
So you're going to be talking about putting together a field trip from an educator's perspective?
Yes, and we're going to go under the assumption that the field trip is already paid for.
So not the securing funding part, because that's easy. So once that's...
As always, securing funding in education is incredibly easy.
You just show up and say, money, please.
Yes. We have a separate podcast scheduled for how to do fundraising and how to find financing. But this one is going to go under the assumption that the money is already there for the field trip.
All right.
Now it's putting it together.
How do we put it together?
Okay. Thing one is that I think every school has a different setup and a different way that field trips are handled for success. So it's not like I can come on here and say, do X, Y, and Z, because in your school it might be ABC. So step one is finding what I'm going to call a success agent.
What is a success agent?
It is that person in your school who knows how to make a field trip go.
Oh, okay.
Like, they've probably been at your school for many years, and you never hear them complain. The secret is they never complain about a field trip. That's your success agent. They're never going to be like, that was the greatest thing ever. But that person that never complains and has been there for a long time, that person knows how to make a field trip go.
And you just look for the person who never complains? There's nothing else to identify them, or do you know them some other way?
Well, I mean, you'll know the teachers in your building, but you're looking in secondary, it was rare to do field trips. So you might instead, my success agent at the secondary level, because maybe we should preface my experience with taking kids places.
Okay.
So I have done field trips every year at the elementary level that are just local. And then because I was high school debate coach, I have taken kids all over the country.
Overnight even there.
Yeah, for like a week. But I have never done overseas with children. That will have to be a separate podcast, but I do have several friends who have. Ooh, I should note that. We should do a podcast about how to take kids overseas.
That sounds like a literal nightmare.
They loved it. Oh my God. So that's a good sign that they must be success agents.
Success agents.
We'll bring on some success agents overseas travel with kids, but we're going to go under the assumption that your school doesn't have field trips that involve overseas travel at this stage of the game.
All right, so what do I do once I identify my success agent?
You want to set an appointment with that person.
And then?
Well, you say and then, because...
there's a trick to that?
Well, teachers like to just pop into other teachers' rooms and be like, hey... And you don't want to do that. You want to ask for a half an hour of this person's time where the purpose is you want to know anything and everything about how they make a field trip go. And when would be a convenient time for them? Would they prefer to do it over the phone at night? Is it better to do it in the morning, in the afternoon? And then you want to make sure that you say thank you for this time.
So you're formally engaging their help instead of casually engaging their help?
Correct.
Because you want them to be engaged in thinking about how to tell you how to duplicate their success.
Exactly. You don't want this to be like you asked today and they're like, oh, just come to my classroom after school today. You want to be like, no, I want to be respectful of your time, aka I'm planting the seed in your head. You'll think about it and you'll think of things over time that you wouldn't have thought of in the moment.
Because otherwise, even if they're helpful, they might just give you like one or two things that they're thinking of. It's like, yeah, this is what I do.
Yes.
You want the full
story.
A little interview almost.
Correct.
And to secure that type of interaction, you've got to formally ask for it. You can't just pop in.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then you are creating questions I would stick to 5.
5 questions.
About what you need to walk away from that meeting with. You want who they contact.
Who?
You want phone numbers. You want things like how do they reach out to parents? How do they manage busing? What permissions do they have to get? How do they tell the principal? You want every logistical component you can think of. Like, do you have to deal with food and feeding the children? All of that, you want those questions answered from their perspective. Don't start asking them how you should do it. Get everything that they know.
What's that mean?
Like, you're not going to them to say, well, how should I structure my field trip? You're going to them to say, how do you structure your field trip? Like, this is not a book you can check out from the library and read, but you need to treat it like it's a book you checked out from the library and read on how to do a field trip for your class, like at your school with your principal and your school district.
But you mean like how they did a field, like
Yeah.
the story of a successful field trip.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This is a story. This is a story of a successful field trip.
Got it.
Okay. So now let's say you have read the story and you know how someone, maybe you decided to interview 2 success agents, but you know how successful field trips happen at your school.
Yes.
Okay, now it's about creating your successful field trip.
I know what one looks like. Now I got to design mine.
Yes. So trick 1, plan ahead.
Are you sure?
Well, teachers think planning ahead sometimes means like they would for a lesson. Like for a lesson, you might plan ahead, maybe a month, maybe a couple of weeks. I argue that at least a quarter.
A quarter ahead.
At least. If not 6 months.
How long is a quarter? Like 9 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Plan way ahead.
Way ahead.
The wayer, the better.
Yep. Communicate to anyone and everyone.
Communicate to everyone.
Yes. Like if you know on day 1 or before day 1 when your field trip is going to be, that parents are like at their prime the week school starts.
Right.
So
as far as planning and thinking about things.
Yeah, that's the time to get people to sign up for any parent help you might need. Now you're going to say like, Johanna, they're going to forget. Well, of course they're going to forget. But you're going to get those parents who are interested, not secured a spot, but interested in assisting. That way you have tons of backups. You're not reaching out last minute. Everything is in the school calendar. No one's booking on your date.
Yeah.
Plan ahead.
And I know that I read this stuff in my kids' backpacks during the first week.
Yes.
As opposed to the rest of the school year.
Correct.
When I don't.
Right.
So that makes sense.
Yes. So we're going to plan way ahead. And then we're going to outsource.
Outsource?
Yes.
What does that mean? Anything
and everything that you can needs to be outsourced.
Yeah, I said, what's that mean?
It means that I make other people responsible for elements of the trip.
So delegate.
Yes, delegate.
Outsource is the wrong word for that?
Oh, why?
Outsource is when you replace an internal job with an external contractor or someone.
Oh, but that's how I feel like it is. Like I'm hands off once I...
Well, that's delegating.
Oh, okay. Then what's the difference in between delegating and outsourcing?
Well, I mean, in a way, if you think of like giving work that would be done by a teacher or an associate or something to a parent, it's not, I wouldn't say wrong to say outsourcing for that, but delegating is, if it's internal, is definitely probably a better word. Because you're just saying...
It's not internal.
It's not internal?
Generally parents and students.
Students is still internal.
You can have it be other teachers. Like, let's say it's all of 2nd grade going on a field trip. Then you as a team are outsourcing who's responsible for what. Or you're delegating who's responsible for what. But outsourcing is like, get it out of your hands.
I read in a business jerk book once that if you are doing something that you could have delegated, then you're not a good leader. That's a sign you're doing bad leadering, because your time as the leader is is important. And if you're doing work that someone else could have done instead, you're not doing a good job.
You know what? I would agree with that with teaching. For example, when I was a high school debate coach, most coaches managed or had one person manage all the travel. I didn't. The students were the one that wanted to go to these places. So, I had kids that were in charge of filling out the paperwork to get approval. And I had kids that were in charge of filling out the paperwork to make sure that the hotel was paid. And I had kids in charge of even checking me. Like, there were certain things I had to do, but a kid was responsible for checking to make sure I did the work when I was supposed to by the date I was supposed to. So I didn't have to worry and agonize over like, oh gosh, did I turn in that form? Did I contact the busing person? At the secondary level, I think the biggest mistake teachers make is they assume that they should do everything for their class, and that's dumb. If the class wants to go on a field trip, then the class needs to go through the learning process of how to make a field trip go, and that's not a waste of academic time.
No, it's more important than anything that you're learning in school that year. That's real practical experience for like getting and finding a job or being good at a lot of jobs once you're there. Like the ability to be comfortable planning logistics like that just for yourself to go on a job search, to go interview at places is probably worth more than a lot of the time that the students in those teams spent learning fractions or something.
Yes. I mean, think about the first time you had to go like on a plane and stay at a hotel for work and work needed pay for all of it.
Yeah, it's not like crippling or stuff, but it's definitely was a little bit embarrassing how little I knew about how to actually do that.
Right.
And I was anxious about screwing something up. So,
whereas I had a team of students who like volunteer. I mean, they didn't volunteer. They actually applied to have leadership positions, and those positions involved helping to make sure our trips went off with a success. And sometimes that involved them doing things like texting me and saying, do you have the school credit card? Like, I needed to not be in charge of everything because it was too stressful. And yeah, so anyway, long story short, I would call that outsourcing, but maybe it is instead delegating.
I'd say delegating's probably a better word for that, especially with the students. I mean, you can't really delegate to elementary kiddos, can you?
No, but you do delegate the learning. So that's actually nice segue, Jared.
Segueing into,
look at
are we
you.
going to do anything on our field trip besides go there efficiently and get back efficiently?
Okay, so another key to having a successful field trip is the pre-learning.
Pre-learning?
Yes. Now, a lot of times teachers do this, but the trick is to make it an adventure, just like a vacation.
Yes.
So, like, I love to travel. I think I've now turned you into someone that loves to travel.
Love's a strong word.
We have a current construction project that you believe should just be vacations to places.
I have enjoyed travel at times in the past.
But our kids do really well with travel.
You give them little, like, scavenger hunt type things almost.
Our kids know a lot about where we're going before we go there. If it's a foreign country, they are exposed to the language in the car. The same thing needs to happen in your classroom. And you don't have to make it a forced thing, but you're just constantly making them curious about where they're going to be going and what they're going to be learning. And that exposure, like seeing something in a picture or on their computer, when they see it in real life, causes them to go like, whoa, look at that. Even if it's something that's like not that exciting, going from I saw it on my computer to now I'm seeing it in real life, like it's like they create an impression of what it's going to be. And then when they see the real thing and it's better, because like shocker, real life is better than a little screen.
Right.
It will change the behavior experience that you have with your students.
Yeah, there's probably behavioral economics, psychology to play in that. Essentially, you're almost setting an anchoring expectation.
Yes.
Like if I bid low and then and then that causes you to eventually accept a lower bid. You're sort of saying, well, this is what the Grand Canyon is like. And then when you actually, that gives you some idea, as opposed to just coming into it completely raw. And then it's sort of like your expectations for everything, no matter how great they are neutral.
Correct.
But if you know a little bit about it first, or you've seen a picture of it, then you got one set of expectations, and then invariably the real world exceeds that. Correct. Creating a positive experience.
And then this is pretty common for teachers, but I like to segment out different parts of a field trip. So that, I take elementary kids to an art museum, and that can be very terrifying because there's naked art. And then there's art that's on the ground that a kid could just walk on into if they aren't paying attention to what they're doing. And so I let the students become experts on a couple of the art pieces so that it isn't me or an adult disseminating knowledge, but that the kids have an opportunity to know more than the other kids and can take a leadership role while there. So it's like giving a purpose to every single moment to someone.
Yep.
Okay. Then after you're done with a field trip, you need to do reflection.
Yes.
So you have to make time for the students to compare and contrast what they learned versus what they thought they were going to learn, and take time for them to talk about the fun memories that they had with their friends on the field trip.
That makes sense. It sounds like a lot of work all of a sudden. Oh, we got to do pre-work. We got to do post-work. Oh.
But it's not.
Okay.
A, I reuse this stuff every year. B, it's about asking questions and making the kids research, right? It's an adventure because they're going to go to the place and they're going to, there's already kind of a purpose set up for when you go someplace, just the exposure to the place is kind of the learning. And so all you have to do is ask the right questions and get the kids time to respond.
I suppose it makes sense that we're not just doing this to see if we can get everyone to a place and then back from a place without anything bad happening.
Well,
we're trying to harness their interest in this experience for them to be interested in learning something.
It is my favorite event that I do every single year. And once I learned how to take a debate team places where they were shared ownership in getting us there and getting us back, those also became my favorite experiences. It was when I was responsible when essentially I was like a travel agent for my class or a travel agent for 50 for my team, that it was overwhelming. And I think a lot of teachers feel like that's what they are. They're essentially a travel agent for their class, or them and the other teacher are a travel agent, and it is stressful and they don't like doing it. Even though they know it's good for the kids, that's what makes it too stressful.
And that makes it hard to do your real job, which is to help people learn.
Correct.
Because you're so tied up in logistics and travel agent stuff that...
and getting this person called back and confirming, just because you ordered the bus doesn't mean the bus is going to be there, and do you have to recheck, and who do you recheck with, and if you need a school credit card or a school PO, and then you're trying to figure out, well, am I sure that they're going to take the PO? What if the person,
Yeah.
Anxiety.
I'm anxious just listening to it.
So you divide that out.
Divide it out. Success agent.
Yes. Okay. Communication. So we talked about this a little bit.
Early and often, and then keep everything so that you're able to reuse that year after year or field trip after field trip. I do this by changing the color of emails so I know what I have to change out based on where we're going or what we're doing. A lot of times you're doing the same field trip year after year, right?
In elementary, I'm doing the same field trip year after year. When it was debate and we were traveling all the time, we probably had, I don't know, I'm guessing here that we had about 20, maybe 25 different places we went every school year. And so, again, I was doing all the signups and everything right at the beginning, and who were my who was in charge of each trip, and that wasn't necessarily me.
Do you have a checklist for this then?
I don't elementary because it's so... For me to do an elementary trip in town in comparison to debate where we went to all over the country, it's like I don't even have to think about it. I don't know.
All right, master, but like if you were like trying to give other people advice on how to do it,
yes, I would have
if you could imagine that.
I'm just being truthful. I don't have one for elementary.
But would you
did
say
have
people
one.
should have a checklist?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they should have a checklist.
Do you have like an example checklist you could attach to the podcast?
If I hunted, I'm sure from debate I have checklists.
Well, if you don't find it, you can always cut this part of the audio out. Okay,
right.
Are we ready to recap then?
No. Okay, so there's one last little thing. You talked about checklists, and the one thing I do have is I create a master list of who is doing what and when. And then I talked about this a little bit, but putting a student in charge of confirming all of that.
Okay.
So like...
that's kind of the checklist right there, right?
Yes. So which parent is my parent contact, or which parents are my parent contact, who's in charge? Now at the elementary, it's like who's responsible for making sure that we have lunch is ordered, who's responsible for making sure this is ordered, and then this is my first year doing this where I'm actually going to have a students apply to be the student leader of our field trip, and then they're going to be responsible for checking in with these adults to make sure buses were contacted, that the food was ordered, that the art center was contacted, all of that, so that I as a teacher don't need to stress, am I remembering to do everything? I have a student who's going to check in with me and make sure I've done everything.
Got it.
Because they'll do better at that than I will. I don't have time. And a kid, it's so unique that they like love it.
It's almost fun.
Well, you put it on a clipboard. That's the secret. I forgot.
It's the clipboard.
The clipboard and a pen, and that they will never forget. Now they have the clipboard, and they will literally walk with it everywhere.
Got it. That's cute.
I did it with high school kids. I'm telling you, the clipboard is like a magical thing.
Yeah, I bet. It makes sense.
All right.
Okay.
Now you can recap us.
So why are field trips good?
Because they make the learning real and you remember it.
And then why are field trips bad?
Because teachers are travel agents in addition to their normal teaching load, and it is overwhelming and stressful. / managing parents with field trips can be overwhelming and stressful.
So how are we going to fix that? We're going to schedule an appointment with a success agent.
Yes, success.
Someone who doesn't sweat field trips, another teacher ask for 30 minutes of the time and then interview them about how they pulled off their field trips.
I bet you'll walk away from that with like handouts and teacher emails and everything that you can edit to do the rest of this.
You're going to communicate early and often, ideally on the first day of school or first week of school.
Yes, it doesn't always work because like I'm not allowed to schedule my field trip that far in advance, but
as soon as you can.
As soon as you can.
Earlier the better.
Yep. It's like tickets for a concert.
Because you're not going to be sweating the logistics as much, we're going to focus more on enhancing the learning by doing pre-learning.
Yes. This will prevent behavior issues when you're there because they'll be too stinking excited.
And they're going to know about the things they're going to see and such.
Yep.
You're going to give something to do in the moment, like goals for them to achieve while they're there.
You mentioned this, but I didn't bring it back up. I essentially use scavenger hunts. We use them for our kids on vacation. I use them for students when we go on field trips. But even if it's like literally when we're driving from point A to point B and from point B to point C, like what I want them to look for or find out the bus window, anything like that. But also like take a selfie with blah, 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 blah. Like those types of things.
then once you get to the field trip and everyone back in one piece, that's the end of everything, and we never have to worry about it again?
Post-reflection.
No, you got to post-reflect. You got, because the whole big opportunity is to actually learn something for real and for a long time by having them talk about it and think about it afterwards, right?
Including their friends. Like, this will be what they remember from your class. And if you give them time to remember that thing that happened at lunch or whatever it was, then it will become cemented, and it's an experience that will be worth the time you put into it.
And then part of making the time you put into it less is to delegate. Yes,
delegate to parents. Students are my big one. Like, you're going to need parent volunteers, but students, as much as you can, figure out a way that kids become involved in the process of planning for the trip. This also helps to deal with behavior issues. I notice my students treat a field trip differently when it's not like a gift that just happened, but something that they worked for to create.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Johanna.
I think you forgot the, well, I guess we didn't. I was going to say the whole checklist thing where you write down who's in charge of what when, and then putting a kid in charge of that.
I meant that was part of delegation.
Oh, okay. All right, now we can say thank you.
Now we can say thank you?
Yes.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, Jared.
Johanna, do you get questions from listeners ever?
Yes, we do.
How do those listeners send you questions?
They send us an email.
Where does that email go?
teachertalk4teachers@gmail.com.
But wait, what kind of 4? How do I do 4?
All of the 4s. They can do a number 4. They can write the word FOR, or they can do FOUR, even though that one doesn't quite make sense.
Well, perfect. teachertalk4teachers@gmail.com.
Yes.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, Jared.
Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life.